Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's workshop on COVID-19, seafood industry response and planning the path forward. So my name is Ashley Sprague, and I am a seafood development coordinator with Perennial. And these workshops were funded by the Nova Scotia Fisheries Council, Fisheries Sector Council, and we are here at the Ignite space in Pictou today. So I would like to say thank you very much to the Fisheries Sector Council and to Ignite for helping us put on these events. So we have really tried to make these as accessible as possible. So this is actually event number 2 of 3. We are here live in Pictou, and also the event is being live streamed. If you are on the live stream, you will be muted. However, you can chat and ask questions. You can raise your hand or use the chat function. We're hoping that people will have an opportunity to ask questions and to make this interactive. So we look forward to hearing your comments and some lessons that you've learned as well. So the purpose today really is to share experiences and information to try to make sure that industry is really clear on all the current regulations and guidelines and rules. And we want to make sure that companies feel prepared for what may happen next with COVID. We know that here cases are on the rise. They certainly are across Canada, and they continue to rise across the world. So we want to remain vigilant. We want to remain compliant. We want to make sure that companies have all the most accurate and current information to help them keep their businesses open and keep their products and their employees safe. So I'm going to start with the quick agenda. So we have a few different speakers here today. We're going to start off with a video message from Minister Caldwell. And then we will hear a bit, actually, I will talk about some industry response about PPE and other policies and things that companies have done to adapt very, very quickly to the impacts of COVID-19. 2020 was certainly a year of uncertainty, and companies really need to make a lot of changes quickly in order to adapt to everything. So I have some feedback from companies, and then we're going to hear from the Department of Labor. And we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask any questions, but they're going to go through the different rules and regulations and show you where a lot of resources are online. And then finally, we'll hear from the Seafood Alliance, and they're going to go over a lot of resources and information sheets and where to find everything online. So all the funding and other supports that are available right now for industry. So quickly, I just wanted to let you know who Perennial is. Some of you may have worked with Perennial before, but for several years, we've been around for about 20 years, and we were primarily an agriculture support organization, but we have been working quite heavily in the seafood field in the last about 2 to 3 years. So Perennial offers a range of services. We have a really amazing quality and food safety team, and they can do training. They can come to a facility and do a gap assessment. They can help companies if they're looking for any sort of certification, such as GFSI. They can make sure that before any official audits, that you'll be as ready as possible and set up for a path to success. We also do product development. So in Bible Hill, we have an innovation center where we're able to work with companies and people to develop recipes, to develop basically prototypes of any ideas that people have. So we can do lots of testing, shelf life, nutritional analysis, packaging. So ultimately take an idea and get a prototype product made. We do other development projects. Mostly we work very closely with the minister at the Minister Caldwell, Fisheries and Aquaculture. And one of the projects that we are running, which I'll talk about a little bit later, is a COVID-19 response fund. And that's something that we were able to get up pretty quickly. And we've been able to get funding out for companies to make the changes that were necessary. So I'll talk more about that shortly. But first, we have a minister's message here. So hopefully everyone can see this and hear this. I'll just make sure it's nice and loud. Okay, Minister Caldwell.
As Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture for the province of Nova Scotia, I'd like to welcome you to the COVID safety workshop. And I want to thank Perennial and the Fisheries Sector Council for making this workshops possible. COVID has been a really big problem for us in Nova Scotia, as it has been all over the world. And I want to commend the industry for the prompt action and the work they have done to prevent illness in their facilities. It's very important to us. And we look at the record across the province and other manufacturing facilities, we do stand above them. And it is because of the work that's being done, as such as today in these workshops, and the work that the individual companies have completed and work closely with their staff to make sure everyone is safe and our food products are safe. It's critical for food supply in our province and food security that your facilities stay open. For so long, I've been talking about food security, never thinking at any time that COVID would come along or anything like COVID and cause a serious problem. But you never know what the problem's going to be. One thing I can say about Nova Scotia, we're resilient, we are strong, and we are growing our economy every day. Again, thank you for attending the workshops. Please bring some valuable messages back to your staff and your businesses, and we're here to do anything we can to help you in that process. Have a wonderful day.
So thank you very much for Minister Caldwell for recording that message for industry. So I'm going to give a little bit of feedback that we have received from companies about how they tackled this COVID-19 situation. And as I said, it really is an example of very quick adaptation and companies being flexible. And it's pretty amazing the response that we've had and that we have been able to keep businesses going, but we want to make sure that continues into the future. So some of the first things that companies needed to do was develop a plan. So this was a really essential first step for companies. And companies were able to get information from public health and the Department of Labor, but really it was very, very important to also talk to management and employees. So everyone I spoke to said that this needs absolutely to be a living document. And in order to get the best compliance and understanding with the new rules that are being set up, you really need to take the input of employees into consideration. You need to make sure that they're comfortable, that they understand why the changes are being made, and that ultimately they feel really safe coming to work. Some companies had issues with carpooling right off the bat. As you can imagine, some employees don't have vehicles or they travel together, and that was not allowed for a while. So what had to happen is people made carpool policies as well. They required masks in the car. They were given letters in case they happened to be stopped by the police to show that, yes, they are essential workers and they're on their way to work. And a lot of people also said when they arrived, they asked them to change the mask. So to prevent any cross-contamination, they would wear one mask in the car only and then put on a new mask when they arrived at the facility. Another important thing was just having a lot of signage. And we're going to hear later from the Department of Labor where all these signs and great posters are available online. But it's really good just to keep that message, keep sharing the message, keep encouraging employees, and hopefully everyone will understand and comply with the new regulations that have been set up. So as we all remember, not that long ago in March, there was an immediate scramble to start getting the supplies when people realized how serious COVID-19 was going to be. So it is very important to stay vigilant on that and make sure you have a good supply of PPE. We don't think this is going to end anytime soon, so we want to be prepared for this second wave. There was a lot of very quick changes that needed to be made, and that caused a lot of uncertainty for employees. So keeping people in compliance, keeping up morale is very important. And comments that I heard about that was really it comes from the leadership. So they want to see the leaders wearing the masks and following the regulations. Again, that communication, that people really feel valued when their voice is being heard, and keep the messaging consistent and clear. We heard from one company that originally the plan was kind of written in almost legalese, and really it doesn't need to be. It needs to be plain language so everyone can understand it and it can be quickly changed as needed. So the masks were the first thing people were looking for, and that was kind of the first information that we had. It's really, getting back to basics, washing your hands as often as possible, and sanitizing surfaces and wearing masks. So most companies do prefer the blue disposable masks, especially with the metal band on there, because it's a good fit and it's very breathable and they're cheap. So most people are using those. The cloth masks, we've had some different feedback on. People like them, but not for long periods. They can be a little bit more heavy. And they're definitely more expensive, but more environmentally friendly since they are reusable. The N95 masks, people kind of thought that's what we needed right off the beginning, but those are very expensive and the supply is quite limited. And so we kind of encourage companies earlier on to leave the N95 masks for the essential medical workers, but instead go for those disposable or reusable cloth masks. Some companies also are using face shields. And these are great as well. Companies and employees seem to like them. They're quite comfortable. Some companies have worn them outside and have had challenges around that. So really just make sure that your equipment can work for the environment that you're in, and make sure that it won't be blowing off or causing any issues for people wearing them out in the field. So protective barriers also happened very, very quickly, and people were able to find source plexiglass and find people who could install it. And it really was all about continuing the workflow, but creating some physical separation from employees. So this is very, very important to keep employees safe, to keep them feeling safe at work. And it's also important to use the space that you have efficiently, right? So a lot of people don't have extra space to be setting up new lines of the processing plant. So things had to be readjusted quite quickly in order to still get the work done efficiently, but to have a little more space for everyone. With arrivals and also lunch breaks, it's really about how do you keep people distanced during these times when people are going to be naturally clustered together. A lot of companies implemented policies around staggered arrivals, so people would come at 15-minute increments, and that would allow people to get through the door without there being any real congestion. It was important for people to start doing health checks. So a lot of companies began taking temperatures before anyone entered the facility. So as you know, fever is one of the main symptoms of COVID-19. So it's really testing for your body temperature. It's not a COVID-19 test by any means, but it will show it whether or not that employees have a fever. With the handheld thermometers, which tended to be used early on, they have, they're pretty accurate for results, but the issue that some companies were having was around efficiency. So it was really slowing people down to have to do this, to write it all down on paper, to have records of everything. So it was kind of a productivity issue. So some people had thermometers at home and had to send in their equipment or send in their records. But there's also some other technologies that other companies started investing in that they were happier with. And just a note that it is important, and companies have mentioned that they can do what they can while their employees are at work, but it's really important to encourage safety at home as well. You don't want to have people with unsafe behavior where they have a higher chance of contracting COVID-19. So for lunch break, similarly, people had staggered lunch times. There were barriers and things set up to allow for physical distancing, a lot of increased sanitation, and some people actually had to get extended lunch rooms or lunch tables, additional washrooms at times. So it's really, again, about trying to space people, not allowing them to cluster. Another thing that worked very well was keeping the tape on the floor to show the 6 feet apart, so people, as they are waiting in line, remember to distance. But those are a few ways that people dealt with large amount of people trying to get to the same place. So here's one of the new technologies for testing temperature. So this is a kiosk, and this is a company actually in Dartmouth called Remote. And these kiosks are a bit quicker and very accurate, and they also really help for record keeping because all the information is stored on the cloud. So they can test temperature, they can test for mask compliance, and to keep your hands away from the surfaces, they also have foot pedals, and they can ask screening questions about how you're feeling that day, and you answer yes, no with your feet. So these are available. Deneen from the Seafood Alliance will later show you another one of these kiosks made by a different company. But it helps employees feel safe, and they can see their records, and it's a quicker way and a little more accurate. So there is an upfront cost for the machine, and then there would be an ongoing annual cost for the software. But really good feedback on things like this. Another thing, instead of the handheld thermometers, people are using some thermal scanners. So this could be something that you would see in an airport. And these are very fast, very accurate, and they can scan groups. So even if there's 12 people huddled in a corner, if one person has a higher temperature, it will sound the alarm, and then all those people can kind of go through individually, and you can see who has the heightened temperature. So again, these are ways that people like. They like to be able to see this. They like to know where the data is going, and it makes people feel better about coming to work each day. So there are some positives. It's very it's easy to focus on the negatives and the challenges, but there have been some positives that have come out of this. And it's just good to remember that a lot of lessons are being learned here, and opportunities like this to share lessons are so important. So one thing we've heard about the increased sanitation. without a doubt. Companies and workspaces have gotten a lot more clean. They're spending more on sanitizer. They are spending a lot more on cleaning staff. And companies hope that this will continue even, past the pandemic. So that's been a really positive thing. Some of the employees really like the extra space. Having their, 6 feet, they're able to be more comfortable. And especially if the processing lines can be set up efficiently, people can continue to work and they're not quite as cramped. So some people like that. And also just the learning and the collaborative response. I was so impressed talking to people, and they said, we talked to our association, we met every single day, we shared information about policies, we could personalize them for our company, but it really was a lot of information sharing throughout the industry. And that's really incredible to see. And I hope that type of communication can continue. One other thing I just want to mention that it's kind of interesting impact of COVID-19 is that companies needed to look to diversify because their usual markets and sales streams maybe have changed. So one thing we know that happened is that people stopped going out to restaurants and they started cooking at home. So the retail was up about 20%, online food shopping up 4 times. And I even saw a stat that about 40% of Canadians now believe that they would do very well on Top Chef Canada. So people are feeling very confident about their at-home cooking skills right now. But we know that people, from research that's been done about proteins, that people don't really know how to cook fish. People don't feel super comfortable touching fish, but they want things that are convenient. So there's an opportunity there for businesses to really look at, how can they get new products or value-added options out to customers? Can they do direct to consumer online sales? So there was a lot of kind of behind the scenes, changing up websites and trying to find other ways to get that product out to consumers. And I will just mention that one thing Perennial is working on is helping companies to identify options for value-added products. Excuse me. And so we have a workshop actually coming up the end of this week in Yarmouth about whitefish and what are the trends and opportunities in the retail market. So if you'd like to know about that, you can certainly reach out to me afterwards and we can give you the link for that webinar that's coming up next week. So I'd love to hear any questions or any comments. If anyone has any feedback, if things that I've been saying, if it rings true, or if you had a different experience, we'd absolutely love to hear that. You can type in the chat box and we can come back to questions as well. I also want to mention that we are preparing a resource sheet, and everyone who has participated in this will get the resource sheet at the end, which will give you all the web links, any Q&As that we have. So don't feel you need to copy down any of the links. We'll follow up with all of that information. And also the presentations are all going to be recorded and available online for later viewing. Okay, if there's no questions at this point, I am going to pass it over to Alicia with the Department of Labor. And Alicia's got a great presentation, and then she also is here for questions. So Alicia, I'm going to hand the screen over to you.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to start my video and share my screen. Okay, can you see everything? See me, see the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, take that as a yes. Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Duran and I am an occupational hygienist with the safety branch at the Department of Labor. And Perennial asked me to come here today just to kind of talk about COVID requirements and information relating to public health and Department of Labor. And for the past several months, I've been seconded over to the COVID file at the safety branch, so I'm quite familiar with the public health order and how it relates to workplaces. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the role of the safety branch, role of the employer, role of employee, and public health requirements. So our role at the safety branch is essentially to follow the public health directive. So as I'm sure you're aware, Dr. Strang, our Chief Medical Officer of Health, has released the public health order, and essentially we take our direction from that when it comes to communicating and educating and enforcing public health requirements in the workplace. So we work with a lot of different businesses. We work with businesses that were forced to close. So for example, restaurant dining rooms. We work with businesses that remained open through this whole thing. So for example, manufacturing and construction, and then seasonal sectors as well, such as yourselves. So essentially what we typically do is we work with the industry association, and we help them develop guidance documents that meet the public health order, and then the industry association will trickle that down to their membership. And from time to time, businesses aren't captured within an industry association. So we have worked with them directly, or large events usually aren't captured by industry associations. So we've been assisting large events with their opening guidance. So COVID-19 is obviously a new hazard in the workplace, and it must be considered during safety planning. So essentially, all businesses in Nova Scotia need to have a COVID-19 plan. So spot checks, these are, we call them inspections, but they are spot checks. And it's essentially an OSH officer coming in to verify that you have a COVID prevention plan. And we use a terminology adequate and implemented in our Occupational Health and Safety Act. And essentially that means that you have the plan and people are actually following it. Because it's all well and good if you have a plan, but if nobody's following it, then it's essentially useless. So typically, I mean, before the pandemic, we would go in and look at health and safety issues in the workplace. And just because of COVID-19, that's kind of expanded to public health as well. So we collaborate with other groups a lot as well. So for businesses that have a liquor license, we may come in with alcohol and gaming, or for large events, we work with communities, culture and heritage, and then the public health officers, we can sometimes come in with them as well. So from time to time, you'll see multiple groups coming in to do inspections. Our approach is to provide support to achieve compliance. So as much as possible, we work with businesses and we try to educate them and work with them, collaborate with them to get them into compliance. We do have enforcement capabilities, so we can write orders. We have something called administrative penalties. That's basically a monetary penalty. We can write summary offense tickets, and in worst case scenarios, we can prosecute businesses. So we do have those enforcement capabilities. We don't like using them. We try not to use them. So essentially, if you work with us, typically we will work with you. We have this 1-800 number, and typically it's used for people concerned about workplace safety or wishing to report workplace safety issues. So if you're an employee, or, I mean, we get calls from spouses, ex-employees, a ton of different people just with safety issues about certain workplaces. We have been receiving a record number of calls, so about threefold the calls that we usually do. And these extra calls are obviously related to the pandemic, and it's just people asking questions about their prevention plan or trying to interpret the public health order. And I understand it's complicated and it's hard to interpret sometimes. And from time to time, we get questions and we can't interpret the public health order. So we have to go to public health and get them to explain how a certain part of it relates to a certain business or a certain activity. So we don't have all the answers when it comes to a public health order, but we have an avenue to get the answers for you. People may think that this 1-800 line is a complaint line, but it's not really. I mean, it is, but if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Like I said, we're really happy to work with businesses if they're looking for education to be in compliance. So I'm going to move into the role of the employer. So this first bullet here, this is what we call the general duty clause, and it comes directly from the Health and Safety Act. So it's saying employers must ensure that they're taking every reasonable precaution to ensure health and safety of people at or near the workplace. So it's kind of like a catch-all, and in situations where we have to enforce the public health order, we're going to write our orders under this clause here. Employers must also ensure that essentially anyone at the workplace is in compliance with health and safety regulations and the public health requirements. So I have this website here, the Nova Scotia Coronavirus website. I'm going to walk you through it a little bit later. But essentially, as an employer, you have to keep up to date on the public health information. And I understand it's challenging. Like, I really feel for businesses having to keep up with the public health information because it's constantly changing, but it's unfortunately the nature of the beast right now. And there's nothing that can really be done. That the science is just continually evolving, and public health has to keep on top of that and has to update their order to reflect what the science is telling them. Employers must also ensure that employees are aware of hazards and have appropriate work instruction to mitigate workplace hazards. So this is an education and training piece. So you need to make sure that you're actually training people on the control measures that you're putting in place. Employees must be provided with proper control measures to mitigate health and safety hazards. So this is kind of where the COVID-19 plan comes into place. So the role of the employees. Employees must, and again, this first bullet is kind of an employee's general duty clause. So employees must take every reasonable precaution to protect the health and safety of them and others in the workplace. Employees must cooperate with the employer, other employees, the Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee, and the Health and Safety rep. So typically you have a Josh or a rep, or unless you're a teeny tiny business. They must follow workplace procedures and occupational health regulations. Again, the employer is responsible for having a plan in place, a COVID-19 plan. The employees are responsible for following it. So if your plan is not being followed, or if there are any other health and safety issues in the workplace that aren't being rectified, the process according to the Occupational Health and Safety Act is that an employee is to first talk to their immediate supervisor, and if that doesn't rectify the situation, they're supposed to talk to their Josh or health and safety rep. And if that doesn't rectify the situation, then you call our 1-800 number and we'll come in and deal with the issue. So I'm going to get into public health requirements. So this is what we call the hierarchy of controls, and it essentially, you can apply it to any type of hazard in the workplace, and it essentially shows the different control measures that you can implement to control a hazard. So you can see this kind of part here is saying that the top is the most effective and the bottom is the least effective. So we first have elimination. So if you can physically remove the hazard, so having people work remotely. Substitution doesn't apply to COVID-19, but just as an example so that you understand what this is, if you have a hazardous chemical in the workplace and you substitute it for a less hazardous chemical, then you're following this substitution method. The next one is engineering controls. So isolating the hazard from people, and Ashley earlier was kind of talking about the physical barriers. And then administrative controls, modifying the way that people work. And this is really behavioral and looking into your policies and procedures. And then finally, the least effective way is personal protective equipment. So the public health website kind of points out some requirements or allowances, I guess, specifically to fisheries and food production plants. So I'm just going to read these off the slides because this is the way that it shows up on the website. So the first one is fishers entering the province to board a fishing vessel or get supplies must self-isolate for 14 days when they arrive, unless they can self-isolate on the fishing vessel for 14 consecutive days before leaving the vessel. They can't leave the boat for any reason, including to get supplies. They can dock and have supplies delivered. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The next one's related to temporary foreign workers. So TFWs can enter the province, but they must self-isolate upon arrival for 14 days. If they can, they should self-isolate on site where they're planning to work. There's been a lot of TFWs that have entered the province so far this year, about 1,700. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the process to get those approved. And if you are not, Perennial is the first point of contact to get through that approval process. The last one is fishing vessels and food production plants are exempt from gathering limits and social distancing. And I just want to be clear about this. This doesn't exempt you from a COVID-19 plan. It doesn't exempt you for any of the public health requirements other than the gathering limits and physical distancing. So I'm going to go through each of the parts of the hierarchy of controls in a little bit more detail and kind of give examples of things that you need to have as part of your plan. So for elimination, like I mentioned earlier, if you can have people working remotely, or if you can have virtual meetings, essentially anyone that's non-essential at the workplace, if you can eliminate or reduce contact with them. Engineering controls, so barriers and partitions to separate workplaces, anything hands-free. So if you can have a hands-free door opener, soap and towel dispenser, any of these type stuff is eliminating somebody touching something and then a bunch of other people coming after and touching the same thing. Temperature screening upon entry, Ashley touched on that. Administrative controls, if you're not exempt, you need to maintain 2 meters between personnel. Think about traffic flow through your facility. So if you have multiple entrances and exits, if you can have one as an entrance and the other as an exit and have one-way traffic through your facility, then that's ideal. It might not work in all situations. And then floor markings are important as well. Proper hygiene, so not having people touch their eyes, nose, and mouth, proper hand washing, hand sanitizer throughout the workspace, cleaning and sanitizing workplace equipment, workspaces, and high-touch surfaces. Ashley talked about the staggered work hours and or arrival and departure times. And then safety signage. So we have a bunch of signage on the website, and I will walk you through this a little bit later, but it's really, really simple to just go on and click it and open it up and print it off. So it's really user-friendly that way, and we really encourage people to have this signage in the workplace. So these are just some examples of the signage that you can find online. So if you're bringing new personnel to site, you're going to want to ask them these screening questions. And these are kind of the standard screening questions that have been approved and endorsed by public health. So are you sick or symptomatic? Have you traveled outside Atlantic Canada within the last 14 days? Are you close contact of a confirmed case, or are you waiting for results of a COVID-19 test? The employees need to be self-monitoring for symptoms, so staying at home if they're sick and completing the online self-assessment as well. Educating workers essentially on your whole COVID-19 plan. Like I said earlier, educating is really, really important, because if you have the plan and people don't know how to implement it, then that's going to cause you problems. And then contact tracing. In a situation where there's a case or a potential case, public health may want to know who was at your workplace at a specific time. So having that information readily available will help that process if public health ever comes to you wanting that information. So personal protective equipment. Non-medical masks are required for indoor public places. Workplaces can set their own policy for private areas. And the requirements on the public health website for masks are that they must be made of a tightly woven material fabric like cotton or linen. We've seen within the last week or two that the federal government has come out with a recommendation about a 3-layer mask. And at the time, our public health was saying 2 layers is fine. So the new direction from our public health is 3 layers is best, but 2 layers is still fine. You don't need to throw out your 2-layer masks. Just make sure that you're wearing them and wearing them properly. So the mask must be large enough to completely cover the nose and mouth. Face shields is a big issue that we see. People think that face shields are a substitute for non-medical masks, and they're not. So please do not allow people to wear face shields instead of masks in the workplace. Also, the clear plastic face masks that you see around, those are also not acceptable. They don't meet public health's definition of a non-medical face mask. And then continue to wear the other PPE that's needed for other hazards in the workplace. So don't change out a respirator for a non-medical mask or something like that. So I have some resources here, and just bear with me. I'm going to open these up, and I'm just going to have to unshare my screen, so just give me a minute with this. Okay, so you should see this website, and it is the COVID-19 and food production industry. So this is essentially we worked with the industry association to come up with these requirements. So if you need to start writing your plan or you need to review it, then this is a really good place to start. And it talks about a lot of things that I've already talked about, and it's specific to your industry. So it talks about the organizational measures, social distancing, personal hygiene. It talks about a bunch of stuff that's relative to operating safely within the pandemic. So I recommend taking a look at that resource. And this is the Nova Scotia coronavirus website. So this has a ton of information. It's not just specific to businesses, it's just generally for the people of Nova Scotia. And there's a lot of excellent information, like I said. So for example, you go into the mask tab and it talks about who needs to wear a mask and what that mask needs to look like. There is this symptoms and testing tab, which I wanted to show you because we're finding businesses are getting really confused about what the symptoms of COVID-19 are. So in your communication to your employees, I would suggest that you come to this website and you copy and paste the symptoms directly from this website in order to avoid misinterpreting the symptoms. And then I wanted to point your attention to the working and businesses section. So it talks a lot about cleaning and disinfecting, communication, gathering restrictions, OSH, so we're in here. If an employee tests positive for COVID, there's a whole write-up for it. Leaves, layoffs, and other labor questions. So that would be our labor standards people. They have a phone number here for that. So there's a ton of information on this website. If you have any questions, I suggest checking that out first, because I find that it's really useful. And this is posters, fact sheets, and resources. So these are the posters that I was showing earlier. So I think I had this one up with the face mask. And like I said, you essentially just open it up and you can print it off and post it in your workplace. So it makes it really easy to be able to use this type of stuff. So maximum occupancy poster, there's a ton of stuff on here that you can use. And I just have our contact information here at the safety branch, our phone number and email address. Like I said before, if you have a question, don't hesitate to contact us. We're happy to work with businesses that have questions or just having problems trying to meet compliance for whatever reason. That's all I had for my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Alicia. Ashley, thank you for that presentation. That was great. We did have one question earlier, and you did refer to it about those triple layered filtered masks. What has the uptake been, and what has the response been? Do you have any feedback on those? Are people using them? Are they available?
That's a good question. I actually don't know about that. I don't do a lot of inspections in the workplace, so I don't know what's really out there at this point in time. I know public health has gotten a lot of questions about it, and that's why they kind of updated the guidance on it to say that 2-layer masks are still fine to use. But unfortunately, I don't really have an answer to that question.
Okay, thanks. So it's just a recommendation for now, but we'll have to keep watching that. Okay, any other questions online or anything else that anyone would like to ask while we have Alicia still here? Okay, we can ask after as well. So I am going to now introduce Deneen Ross from the Nova Scotia Seafood Alliance. Okay, thanks, Alicia. I will take over the screen now. And okay. All right, just be 1 second here. This should. Okay, perfectly. Okay, welcome, Deneen.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. As Ashley mentioned, I'm Deneen from Nova Scotia Seafood Alliance, and I did just check on my phone, and there are, as of today, 24 cases, active cases in Nova Scotia, 3 new yesterday, and they were related to close contact. So it just goes to show that it is super contagious. And I think in Nova Scotia, we've been quite complacent. I think all of us know when you're out and about, you don't see a whole lot of people wearing masks. That's something that we all need to do or keep one on us so that we always have one. And going back to what Alicia said, for the seafood industry in particular, processors and plants, just because we're exempt from social distancing and the gathering limits doesn't mean that you're exempt from masks. So it is something that's still important, something that has to be looked at, both the reusable and the disposable. Now, the good thing is I do come to you with basically a path to where you can find some money. There's some of the funding is starting to, I don't want to say dry up, but it's the majority of it's been utilized. Although the government recognizes this and has expanded and or extended a number of the programs. So I'll just go through a few of these really quick, and then I can delve into a couple of them a little more deeply. First one is SEBA. So SEBA is expanded. And as you can see on the screen here, so there's work sharing, Perennial, the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, or Regional Recovery and Relief Fund, has reopened. The AAFF and SSA members can contact Heath Murdoch. Those are for a number of programs. And that's a little faster than if you go through the AAFF by yourself. A new program is you can export for small and medium enterprises, 75% non-repayable, and that's looking at new market exploration. So I'll go through some of these a little more carefully. The SEBA, which is the Canadian Emergency Business Assistance Program, is fantastic because it was 40,000, and I know a lot of people took advantage of that, which is wonderful. They are now offering an additional 20,000 is available, with 10,000 of the entire amount is forgivable if repaid by December 2022. That application has been open and extended to December 31st. So if you've not applied for it at all, you can actually apply for the entire 60. So that's really beneficial. There's a lot of information there, and I will have the links on the hard copy and as well as the online copy of basically the recap of the webinar here. The CEWS program has also been expanded and extended. That's the emergency wage subsidy. The program has now been extended all the way until next summer. New eligibility allows more applicants to apply, and in fact, you don't have to fit the criteria of a 30% decrease in your sales. You can have a smaller decrease, and or you could have no decrease at all and still be eligible for some subsidy. It'll be a smaller amount for sure, which will reflect, you know, what your income is, but money is still available. And that's something I think that everybody should look into. This here is the Canada United. This was fairly new. I talked about it about a month ago. Grants, and this is a grant, so it's money for, it's basically to replace what you may have already spent on PPE that you have. So like, as I mentioned, it's a grant, so it's up to $5,000 available. This has been heavily utilized. A week ago, they had just reopened it, and I know Nova Scotia was eligible again, but it's something that you may want to check because it's been used quite a bit. So, and you can see a number of items here that 14 million has been contributed. It's in conjunction with RBC. I do see a few of their posters around town. I live in the city. So that is something worthwhile looking at, and it's a great program. This is the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. This has reopened as well. The short window to access these topped up funds. This is funds that were not used by other provinces have been funneled back to Nova Scotia. And there's opportunities there. Your local contact, if you're in the HRM, is Larry Cole, but there are a number of obviously different ACOA regional offices. So you would go through ACOA for that program and whether or not you're eligible. If you're looking for a new credit, there's BCAP and the BDC, and those are through regular lending facilities as well, such as the credit union and your regular lending facilities. Do you need employees? I was on a labor call yesterday, a webinar. There are employment engagement specialists at Nova Scotia Works, and Nova Scotia Works is the name that I'm familiar with. There are other offices with different names. You can contact Ann Leahy, and she will put you in contact with the right specialist. This would include if you're looking for temporary foreign workers. They can help you a fair bit, and I was enlightened actually at the last workshop that Perennial now has a specialist for temporary foreign workers as well. So there are a couple of different places that you can access the correct information to get what you are looking for. And as I had mentioned, Anne is really great at finding locals that may fit the bill. And I think sometimes you might be surprised at how easy it may be to contact them. Grant Thornton is another really great resource or something that you can access for advice. They do have a portal that is very specific to the seafood industry. And that's something that you could, they're finding the way forward microsite, they call it. And they're doing a fair bit of work, and they have done it on behalf of the seafood processing industry. They've also included a number of guides for harvesters. So it's worthwhile having a peek at what Grant Thornton can do for you. And as I mentioned, they have advice for you and you can go from there. But their microsite is fantastic. You might want to have a look at that. The NSBI, so Nova Scotia Business, is offering digital assistance. So if you're looking to improve your online presence or increase what you are currently doing in your market, they have a program that is open until December 31st of 2020. So there's not a whole lot of time, but they will give you a 50% grant to a max of $10,000 to improve upon and or build something from scratch. So you would pay the half and then they'll top up the other half. And then the last one, and this is fairly new to me, the Can Export SME program. Because of the international travel has been restricted, Can Export is helping fund e-commerce and also any type of partial travel costs. If you are going to attend, actually you can't attend, it's for virtual trade shows and other business-to-business events. So those may be in person and help pay for international market certifications and requirements. So the eligibility for that is it's not complicated, but it's a bit more extensive. You can get up to $75,000 in funding. The information is here, and I do have more contact for you in the FAQ at the end. There is a new COVID alert app for Nova Scotia. You can download that through Apple or Google Play on your phone. This was the new technology that Ashley had mentioned. These are thermal scanners. So what they would do is take your temperature, and the same with the remote program. This is something that's beneficial for employers because it will also notify them if somebody does have a higher than what it should be temperature. So they'll be advised to go home, and the manager and or the owner would be notified that somebody is not well. And if you need some more information, I can definitely help. Here's Ashley. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deneen. Okay, I just have a few more resources that I wanted to share. This is Ashley again. So Perennial has worked on the COVID-19 response program. And this was a program that came together very quickly in order to support companies to maintain their business continuity. So to keep employees, keep your products safe. And the fund is still available, and it's available to any licensed operation within fishing, aquaculture, marine plant harvesting, for buyers or processors or harvesters. And it's really meant to cover any incremental cost from COVID-19. So anything above and beyond your regular costs that you needed to purchase. So that could be PPE, it could be other safety materials like barriers. And also we are able to help cover the time for developing new policies and training staff on these new policies. For the funding, we are able to provide 70% funding for up to $25,000 per licensed facility. So if you are a very large facility or a large company and you have a few different facilities, we want to make sure that all those places are safe, those employees can keep coming to work. So you can get up to $25,000 per facility for a total of $100,000. And this has been going very well. You're able to backdate expenses to March 15th when people really started purchasing PPE and the public orders all came into place. And right now we have approved 88 applications. We've handed out over $1.1 million, which is incredible. And you can see the little chart here that we've trying to reach around the province as much as we can. So as I said, money is still available. And even if you have already applied and maybe you received $2,000 or $10,000, you can reapply as you need to continue to refill your stock of PPE. So you can apply again until you get to that $25,000 maximum. So just some examples of things we have funded. So lots of PPE, all the masks, gloves, that sort of thing, thermometers, sanitizer, sanitizing stations, those thermal body scans, sneeze guards. Again, the policies, time to develop that and to train, also signage. And then things just to help people keep physically distanced. So potentially a new expanded part of the processing line or an expanded lunch table, things like that. And even construction or more rental, I guess, of other rooms. So if you needed, to convert something to make a lunchroom to keep people spaced out, or bathrooms, purchase extra tables, that sort of thing. So we can help with a lot there. And I'm the contact, so please give me a call or an email if you have any questions. We'll again send out all of these resources so you can have the links to access all these programs, but money is still available here until March at least. So we really are encouraging people to uptake this fund. It's non-repayable, 70%. So it's been, we've had good feedback from companies on this. And the other program that Perennial has been involved with is to support temporary foreign workers through their arrival and their isolation while in Nova Scotia. So Perennial can help with things like preparing for their arrival, making sure you have all the resources, documents you need. They can help with transportation, translation if needed, and then just also help during that 14 days, the mandatory isolation. So weekly check-ins, ongoing support for the employer and the employee. And just for context, it's kind of interesting to see the number of people that are still coming in and are continuing to come to Nova Scotia. I believe we have 4 flights next week for seafood employees coming in, and 277 are with the seafood sector, and they come from all different places around the world. So we want to make sure that they are safe, that they feel safe, and that all employees and employers are following the proper procedures to isolate these staff. And on the Perennial website, again, you will find a lot of information here. Pre-screening checklists and self-isolation plans and best practices. And all of these are for really the agriculture and seafood sector. So if you see anything that says agriculture, it probably will still apply, and take a look. And here's the contact for the Temporary Foreign Worker Support Program, Sarah Bone, and we encourage you to reach out to her. And that is what we have for our webinar today. So I'd just like to take another minute and provide another opportunity. If anyone has any comments or any questions, we will get a summary of all questions asked and share that in the resource kit. We'll probably have that ready by the end of next week to share with people. And we're also always interested to hear feedback as well. So if you ever want to share your experience or any lessons you've learned, we would really love to hear that. And I'm seeing no questions or comments at this time. So I would really like to say thank you again to the Fisheries Sector Council. Thank you to Alicia, Department of Labor, and Deneen with the Nova Scotia Seafood Alliance. Thanks to Ignite, and thanks to all of you for participating. There's lots of other great training sessions that the Fisheries Sector Council offers, so I encourage you to take part in those as you will. And again, thank you very, very much, and stay safe out there. Okay, have a great day.